Hello, I am Follygon, and in this video I am going to be digitally sculpting a Cyberpunk Geisha Girl. But before we get in and talk about the process, if you are new around here, click that subscribe button. And if you want to learn more about digital sculpting, check out gumroad.com/Follygon for things like my custom brushes, materials, courses, and some other free goodies. We're starting off very simply here by blocking out the main proportions of a character's head. Typically when I do this kind of thing, I don't have much of my mindset in the direction of the final character. I'm really just trying to work quickly and get something on my canvas. So everything that I'm creating right now is kind of a block out, a base, something to have on my canvas so I can continue from here. Now, a lot of the time you could probably have some kind of base mesh or form that's hyper simplistic like what I have here on screen to kind of carry you forward with a lot of stuff. I personally prefer to create all of that from scratch. I find that just having the practice of doing that every single time helps me to improve, helps me to get faster. I get better at recognizing those proportions earlier on, when things are off, all that good stuff. But of course, if I'm doing something for a client, it's a little bit different, and speed is the name of the game there, so I don't mind using a base mesh to save myself time and my client time and money, so that's always smart. Work smarter, not harder, right? During this process, you can see that I keep things very messy. I find that it's kind of a waste of time to keep things super clean, try to sculpt on your surface, clean it up, and then kind of repeat that process back and forth. So initially, I just keep things super messy, and you'll see here for a while that I actually keep things super messy for quite a long time. It definitely took me a long time before I felt comfortable in my videos showing more of this messy state. Anymore, I could care less because I know at the end of the day, at the end of the video, the sculpt is going to be refined and shape up into something nice. So for this portion, it's okay to keep it ugly. I can work a little bit faster that way and, kind of just work on the big shapes, the primary forms, like I'm doing right now, working on those eyes, trying to find a nice angle for that top lid. I try to give it a little bit of a sad kind of downward slope, as you saw. I actually push that just a little bit further later on after I begin cleaning things up. But we're moving on, we gotta move quick, right? So we're moving on to working on the mouth. But when you work on the mouth, you can't just work on the lips, right? The face is an entire interconnected area, so if you're working on lips, you need to be working on your chin and cheeks and the side plane of the face and all this other stuff. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just one thing at a time. That's why I try to work quick in the beginning so I can jump around as much as possible. Speaking of moving ahead very quickly, you can see that I start to block out some of the kind of larger chunks for the hair. You can see that I create a very simple shape for some quick bangs, and then a little bit of a side piece there that I just keep all symmetrical. This character stays fairly symmetrical throughout the whole thing. I wanted it to be a little bit more graphic, and I felt like that made a bit more sense for this piece. You guys will see here soon enough once it starts to shape up. But yeah, just a few pieces of geometry, keeping it as simple as I can. Really, simple primary forms for the back of the head. It's just a sphere. I throw in a couple move brush strokes to squash it around, pinch up a couple edges, and then, we're ready to go. We're ready to move forward from there. Another thing you'll see me do here on the face is I'll make a couple sketch marks to indicate where I want some of the cybernetic pieces. So I create a couple different just kind of strokes on my surface, really quick, really nasty, but those are indicating where later on I'd like to add a little bit more detail, so you'll see that come together here very soon as well. I really wanted to make the silhouette of this piece really just visually distinct, so I played around with taking those eyelashes and extending them out super far off from the face. I actually extend them even further later on so that they pick up a little bit more in the silhouette. I even doubled them up to create a little bit of a rhythm there to help bring in a little bit more focus. And then I instantly get in and start playing around with color. I have found that I like to bring color into my sculpts a little bit more early. Ever since Sculptober, I've been maybe just mentally working a little bit faster. Physically, I've been working, or digitally, I guess, I've been working a little bit faster for sure, but my mental game in terms of just moving forward more quickly on some stuff, I think has definitely improved. So one of those ways that I like to do that is just throw some quick paint on my sculpt. Much like during the initial phases of blockout when I am just kind of sketching on my surface, I actually do the exact same thing with paint. So a lot of those shapes on the face for those paint strokes, those splotches, are very unrefined. And that is okay. They're just meant to be a placeholder to potentially be a color that I like and to see if I like the placement for that. Like I said, I wanted this piece to be very graphically distinct, have a strong silhouette, all this stuff, so you can see that I have a lot of these really bright, saturated colors on my sculpt. This bright red and blue contrasted very nicely with this white and black. So only 4 colors here, pure white, pure black, well, a little bit off-white and a little bit off-black, I should say. But then that nice red and blue, I thought, brought in a really cool tone. I typically see a lot more warm colors in this style of artwork, so I wanted to try to contrast that with a couple areas of cool, bring in focus to a couple specific areas around the eyes and lips. I think it ends up looking pretty cool here at the end, but we'll continue on making some proportional changes to the larger form of the face. One thing you can never be afraid of when sculpting is taking a step backwards. Sometimes you push ahead really quick, like I do, and you say, well, I maybe need to take one step back really quick and work on the larger shape of, say, your head, for example, and fix some of the proportions there, which is what I just did. That's totally okay to do. I do it myself all the time. I am not perfect. I do not get things right the very first time very often, so I often have to go back and make corrections where I need them. Then it's off to softening a lot of the form around the face, working on some of the plane changes a little bit more. This is when I go from a little bit more of that messy state that I had previously to something a little bit more clean. I still keep some of it a bit messy at this stage, but at least now I'm starting to refine what I already have, and that is a really good place to be because most of the hard work at this stage is already done. It's just a matter of taking what you have and refining, cleaning up, polishing, and continuing to add more parts and pieces to the larger form of your piece. One of those things that I want to add is a nice framing element for not just the character's body, but also for the character's face. So I initially add a little bit of taper to this body and clothing, and I start to sculpt on a little bit more anatomy here with some quick breasts. Very simple form here for the chest, just sketched on with a standard brush. But talking about that clothing, I end up keeping that solid black, and I break the shape language of the character. I do that by making that a bit more rectangular, and by doing that and keeping it solid black, it's going to force your attention a little bit more up to the nice bright white face. Lots of contrast and color there. Then that nice blocky shape helps to just very quickly lead your attention right up to the face. A little bit more adjustment here to some of the form in the chest. I more so only work on the areas that are going to be seen, so a little bit more work to the collarbone and form right there at the base of the neck. Some tweaking to soften some of the shapes around the eyes and nose, as well as just adjusting shapes here for the angle of that eyelid. I mentioned that I would be softening and turning that down a little bit more, not quite sad, maybe a little bit more melancholy, something like that, as well as just adjusting the shape of the nose, making that a little bit more flat, a little bit more wide, and then it's time to start playing around with paint a little bit more. So I really liked this kind of triangular shape coming out from the eyes. I felt like that kind of framed the face pretty nicely through there. And it also helped me to start thinking about some of these little cybernetic augmentations that I'm going to be adding here very soon, which I really enjoyed the process for this. I'll talk about that here in just a moment. I thought I had a pretty clever solution for those. But before we worry about any details, we have to focus on silhouette a little bit more. And for that, I create these radial shapes around the head, helping to create a little bit of a halo effect. I plan on having this very graphic red circle in the background of the character around the head, and for that I wanted to help frame that shape a little bit better, so I thought that the hair kind of mirroring that radial effect would be a really great way to kind of bring that all together. Couple more form changes around the face. There is that flattening of the nose that I was mentioning there. Even now at this stage, I am going back through, making sure that my plane changes are reading very nicely. You can see I'm sharpening up those forms to make sure that things are kind of going the right direction. And then it's as easy as going back through with a smooth brush to start softening those out and making things feel a little bit more organic. Alright, here's some of the fun part that I really enjoyed using my cube tube brush. One of my favorite brushes, a custom brush that I have that you can of course get over on my Gumroad. Very simple brush, you just draw on your surface and you can create a tube of geometry in the shape of a cube. Hence the name of the brush, cube tube. So after drawing in a bunch of those lines, I can start adjusting those and trying to create a visually more interesting shape, as well as taking a step back there to work on the silhouette there with the clothing, as I was mentioning earlier, make that feel a bit more squared off, Jump on back up to the eyes to make something a little bit more cyberpunky, a little bit more visually interesting. I was really liking the black and red effect there. I even end up making those glow a little bit later on. I start adding in even more details with these cybernetic implants in the face. I'm definitely thinking more form over function here, just trying to create some visually interesting shapes. Not really thinking about how any of this would work or what any of it does, more so just trying to create something cool. Refining the paint now because my paint from earlier was very messy. I'm not sure how much of that really picks up on camera. When I am recording this, I think not very much of it, so some of it might look passable, but I can guarantee you that it was a very messy paint job. So here I am going back through, cleaning up a lot of that, making sure that I have some nice, crisp, clean edges, some nice, good forms there, really helping to frame around those cybernetic implants that I've created a little bit more, and overall just trying to clean things up here for the final sculpt. Couple more details around the neck, flowing down into the chest, working on putting a little bit more form down there. For all of these tubes of geometry, I actually turned on live boolean and subtracted them from the face. So all of those shapes end up getting these really nice hard surface clean forms that I can later subtract from the face and create a really cool effect. Then some final efforts to the halo of the character, creating that really cool visual like radial effect that I was mentioning earlier. A couple final details here for the clothing, and that is pretty much it. So here is a quick turntable of the character before I show you the render. If you are new around here, consider clicking that subscribe button. And if you want to learn more about digital sculpting, check out gumroad.com/Follygon for things like my courses, brushes, and materials. And if you haven't seen, I now have a version of my course, The Appeal Academy Lite, which is a half-off version that does not include the one-on-one mentorship, but still includes all the great lectures and bonus content. Check it out. There's a link down in the description. With that, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have a suggestion for a character or a sculpt that you'd like to see me create in the future, leave it down below in the comments. And with that, I will see you in the next one.